Thanks, and thanks for that question, because then it leads us straight into this. So we acknowledge that this was a co-funded project, and we're really grateful to have got that started. And I acknowledge Larisa for having brought this to the attention of the co-fellows to look into it a little further. Thank you. So, I mean, peer review, we know the role of peer review, and it goes back quite a long time, where, you know, initially when scientific and philosophical communities got together, and we thought peer review was a great way for intellectual rigor in what people were thinking and doing. And later on, as with the rise of student-centered learning approaches, this has gotten quite well embedded into the teaching that we do, particularly in our classroom settings. And certainly it's gone beyond the classroom settings, and we've come together even within the sort of writing workshops and creating a sense of community through this whole peer review approach that we've got. And I would say just about all disciplines are now adopting this whole peer review approach to enhance learning outcomes and work towards that professional practice. So it's really embedded in the way educators are approaching peer review. So the purpose behind peer review comes as no surprise to the group here. But, you know, we want to make our students into better critical readers, reflective writers, collaborators, active learners at the end of the day. And it's all embedded very thoroughly into our educational theories that we've got. And we've got considerable evidence, particularly from face-to-face learning environments, on the value that peer review brings to us. And so much so that it's now also regarded as part of the quality or assurance audit as a gold standard towards teaching and learning. Next slide, please. So the question that arises here, what's happening in the online space? That is the question that we were trying to find out. And when we looked at the literature, thanks to our student fellows who joined us, is that when you have an asynchronous peer review setting, undoubtedly it provides some degree of flexibility for the students. There's more time for people to think about the feedback that they're going to be giving. However, literature is highlighting that there's a lack, this whole idea of a lack of instant feedback really affects the quality of the interactions and the motivations of the participants there. And then there is, we know and recognize that there's a higher dropout within online environments, but this then affects the peer review interaction and continuity. And monitoring feedback for us as educators is also trickier because of the volumes that we work with in an online environment. And because of the distance and perhaps even the cultural and social elements, the distance between peers seems to also affect the way they perceive the interaction that they've got. So they hold limited value for what they're learning from that peer. So with this as our backdrop, and we decided that we were going to look at how are we within the University of London's degree and open content online courses delivering peer review, and what are the patterns of engagement and effectiveness of our peer review activities, and not forgetting that what are the technological benefits and challenges that we were faced with in delivering peer review. I'm going to hand over to Larisa.
In terms of the methodology, so we started with Daksha explaining the literature review, and the next step was to select all the courses. So we selected about 8 courses, and in terms of the criteria, I'll explain later on, so the criteria for selection of those courses. So then we identify the theoretical framework, which is community of inquiry framework. So Grice and Anderson. So this is our principal framework for creating the questionnaire, evaluation questionnaire. So then we developed a questionnaire based on this framework, and then actually evaluated the courses with the peer reviews in them. And finally, we looked at also the learning analytics on a cohort of 100 students on those courses. So, in terms of the selection courses, so we used the different criteria, various criteria. So for example, the level of the program. So undergraduate, postgraduate courses, then also the peer review activities, whether they're summative or formative activities, also the marking rubrics. So the rubrics, design of the rubrics, and also the kind of use of the rubrics in the peer reviews. So also the grading, providing feedback and grading of the peer reviews, whether this has been done by peers or with the use of AI, Coursera Coach, for example. And also the range of the peer reviews in terms of the format. So, for example, we use the tools out of the box from the Moodle, for example, in the Coursera, so called the peer review workshop or the just peer review activity tool, or the, for example, discussion forums we used as a vehicle for kind of collaborating communication, collaboration, and providing feedback to one another. And also the technology, so which is obviously the impacted on the design and the operation of the peer review. So which is University of London Moodle, LMS Moodle, and also Coursera. So because we're delivering design and delivering our programs on both platforms. In terms of the frameworks which we use to create evaluation questionnaire. So based on the literature review, and we identified two major frameworks. So as I mentioned, Grice and Anderson community of inquiry, which is our principal framework, and also the Redmond et al. Online engagement framework for higher education, which is complement, actually both frameworks complement one another, and they're both focused on the enhancing of the online learning experiences as such. So the active learning, so the student-centric learning, so the creating community of practice and cooperation, and also so the ability to kind of develop reflective and critical thinking, and literally also the instructors role as such. And in terms of what the emphasis of the community of inquiry framework is on the critical inquiry and knowledge building. So whereas the online engagement framework is complement that framework by adding emotional engagement and the behavioral engagement as a key aspects in the online learning as well. So which is obviously inform the motivation of the students participate in the peer reviews. And so just briefly, a few words about how we define the teaching presence, cognitive presence, and the social presence. So the teaching presence is defined through the learning design of the course and the peer reviews as well, and the scaffolding of the students' engagement in the activities, and also facilitating of the course, overall course, and the activities as well. Cognitive presence is defined by kind of revolves around the critical and reflective thinking, and also knowledge building and the meaning making for deep learning. And the social presence is defined through the students' ability to engage one another. So they can create a relationship between one another in the online environment. And so yeah. Now I'll want to actually explain the questionnaire.
So the idea behind using the frameworks was that because we were using such a diverse range of courses, we wanted a single instrument that we could then measure across these different courses. So our questionnaire, and if anybody's interested, please get in touch with us and we're happy to share this questionnaire with you. We created it which is 7 sections, and each one of them has 3 to 5 questions within it. Each of those questions has a Likert scale to it from 0, where where an element was present or not present, right up to 2, which was done really well. And we looked at each of those: teaching presence, the cognitive, and the social presence. And then we did questions on the technical elements and the analytics. That the analytics was fairly limited in the sense we looked at the percentage of students who participated in the peer review activities, simply because of the logistics of dragging out these analytics from these different courses. So what did we find? So I'm going to try and zoom through the findings across the different presences of the framework and what we found in this. On the positive sides, where the teaching presence was concerned, the courses right across the board had very good scaffolding of the peer review activities within it. There's a wide range of peer review activities, ranging from critical literature reviews right up to developing multi-stage proposals for projects and problem-based activities. There were some courses that had very clear templates in which the students could respond so that they stayed on track onto what was required. And all of them had a rubric. On the sort of the weakness side, we felt there was a real lack of description, or we've not felt, we found a lack of descriptions for what is the value to the student for doing a peer review. And that seemed to be the theme right across. Or how will that benefit me as a student? There was the challenges with the rubrics, how they were created. Most of them were a ticking exercise, and there was an absence of a time frame on when to complete a peer review. And so it wasn't unusual to find that the activities would be left and the student carried on with the course, and would they have to come back to complete that activity? Where's the challenge? Well, this is where it comes down, is that across the board, despite all the efforts made, most of the courses had somewhere between 6 to 10% of students participating in these formative peer review activities, save for one course where there was about 35%, because it led to a summative activity. So 100% across summative peer review activities, but formative, very poorly undertaken by students. And 77% of students' submissions were graded by AI, where AI was present. And so this was linked, in our opinion, with the timeliness of the review and feedback that they were getting. Yeah, here's an example of a student's grading. You can see this particular student had worked across a range of different activities of peer review. However, you're finding that they've given about quite a few, submitted quite a few of the activities, but received only one, and that one was AI that was responding to the student. So you can see where the motivation would fall down, that they're active but there's nobody giving them feedback. Next slide. I think I've got quite a lot to go through. So when it came to cognitive, there was definitely diversity and choice, but once again, the challenge here was the rubrics. And this gave very limited opportunities for reflective feedback. Another problem we identified was anonymity. There was a lack of anonymity due to technical issues, and feedback was not always rated by the recipients. Collaborative learning opportunities within the environment of the online courses was, again, not evident at all. So when it came to the rubrics, So this is what happened. We realized that the rubrics was causing quite a lot of an interesting issue. So we looked at it a little bit more thoroughly using the UK University assignment criteria. And once again, we found that whilst they were aligned with learning outcomes, there was clarity and transparency. There was a problem with reliability and consistency in the way students were using it. There was a lack of reflection and dialogue facility. And often we were seeing one-word answers and conflicting answers as well. So here's an example that we're showing on the type of rubric is that you're finding that there are points and all the student has to do is tick on the section that you have a clear understanding of the learner, so accomplishment, and they just simply tick, or there's a scale that they use. But when you look at the responses on the other side for the questions, you see, for example, in this, where the security and privacy requirements, the setting listed in the submission, one student's response was no, and the other one was yes. The next one was, what did you like most about the answer? It was good, brief, and the next one is it didn't cover the topics very well. So you can see for the same student's piece of work, they were getting conflicting responses from their peers. So therein lies the problem with peer confidence on what they were getting from it. And this was repeated quite a number of times across the different courses. Again, anonymity was a problem. Here I've blacked out all the names of the students. And so that was, again, another problem. From a social presence, we felt that the lack of anonymity, the single-worded answers and minimal responses really were the blocks for social interactions. And of course, the timeliness. The lack of a timeline really blurred that completion that was required. Slide. Yeah. This was very different when you looked at summative peer reviews, where there was an attempt to be a lot more thorough in the way they worked to it. There was a clear lack of motivation, and that is something that I think we need to dig into a little bit more. Yeah. I'm going to hand over on the technical challenge.
Regarding the technical challenges, they were determined by the platform which the process was developed on and being delivered. So as I mentioned before, the LMS Moodle, which is University of London LMS, and also Coursera. So here you can see a kind of snapshot of the peer review workshop tool, which we used out of the box on the Moodle. And as you see, even the interface, which is the student-facing interface, can be quite overwhelming. So, and although it seems like a clear, it's divided in different phases, but it's semi-automated, and some kind of admin support is required to switch between different phases. And on top of that, even to start this workshop, it requires quite kind of substantial technical knowledge. So, and in order to run just one workshop, so it means some learning technology must be involved in this. Of course, the academics to develop this, and also the admin person who will help to run it. So this becomes quite a big piece of work in terms of even just the setting this up and running. So on top of that, some people may say, why are you using this out-of-box quite clunky tool? So when, for example, there are so many different third-party software which can do job much better. So, but then it becomes this is kind of open the more challenges. So because subscription may be costly, and also again integration to the LMS, and also the training which is required for staff, and so on. So it's always kind of different challenges, always kind of caused by the technology. So in terms of the Coursera, we have different sets of technologies. So as Daksha mentioned about anonymity. So if, for example, anonymity settings was missed out, so then it's literally impossible to change them on a later stage. So it means we have to contact the Coursera technical support and help us to kind of do that. And also it was because in the open content courses, peer reviews, for example, was mostly the, not mostly, always a summative assessment. So although engagement of students was very high, but on the other hand, if, for example, students didn't submit the assessment on time, so they couldn't proceed to the next item, or even could not complete a course until either they provided, or actually they're supposed to do both, of course. So to provide the feedback to the students, also receive a feedback. So that's hence I have so many complaints, and quite decent ones, saying I've done my work, but I can't continue. So that's, again, this is technical challenge as such. Another technical challenge is, so for example, all the content authored on the platform, so can be translated in native languages of different people. But if it's, for example, created by the learner itself, so it cannot be translated. So there are different types of challenges, I would say. So, and the last slide, so understand that. So this is just the findings. So this is the kind of conclusion. So the peer review can enhance the online learning, given that it's scaffolded and the course design and supported and clear instructions provided. So it's tightly managed by time. So for example, in terms of the submission, then providing timely feedback, receiving feedback, and also reflection. So, and also it must hold the value for students. So if some kind of weight and summative weighting is assigned to this informs the more kind of involvement, students engagement in it. So we mentioned about technical anonymity and feedback, and rubric design. Again, that's the challenge right now. And so AI coach is just, it's proven that it provides personalized feedback and becomes very valuable tool in these activities. And the self-reflections is very important part of the whole cycle of the peer review. When the piece of work you submitted, you provide the feedback, you receive a feedback, you reflect on the provided feedback, improve your submission, and also kind of self-evaluate. So, yeah, hope. So